is the Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for joining us. Hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today we're here with Earle Hager, who is the managing partner of the Neutrino Donut, a consulting firm dedicated to transforming scientific research into real-world commercial solutions. With extensive experience in technology evaluation, market planning, and commercialization strategy, Earle has helped startups, universities, and government-funded projects, particularly those supported by SBIR, STTR programs with NIH, DOE, and NSF, and navigate the complex path from innovation to impact. Earle, thank you for joining us.
It's great to be here.
Great. So where are you calling from today?
I'm calling from West LA.
Right.
The company was founded in Austin, Texas, and then I moved to Los Angeles in 2013.
Cool. Well, tell us more about how your journey into scientific commercialization began and what led you to found the Neutrino Donut.
Well, I started out doing a lot of consulting work at different corporations. When I lived in Philadelphia, when I moved to Texas, I moved into business development with a series of startups and sales positions. And then an opportunity came up at the IC² Institute at the University of Texas at Austin. And basically, we were doing projects in the area of working with startups throughout the world. And I started out working with some stuff in Mexico, and then I started on a project out of Hungary. And I had about 19 techs I had to work on. I was on the road to Hungary. I had a whole lot of time to spend at the Frankfurt airport. And I read them all, and I saw the field. It was just, I got it. I got what needed to be done. I knew the markets they needed to look at. I understood the technology, how they needed to grow. And it was like, this is what I want to do. And so I worked at UT for a number of years. There was a swab out in budgets and changes. And then I worked on my own. And then I was also at UC Irvine doing business development for the tech transfer office, which was kind of like a merit badge I needed. And I've been working full-time since 2016 in the area of SBIRs. And basically, I understand the market. I understand what it takes to get into the market, where to go, how to write commercialization plans. I've got a monstrously large network of people to connect with. And that's how the whole thing got started. And it's been fascinating the whole time. And it's one of those things you look at and say, I have no plans to retire. This is fun.
Well, that's great. So what have been some of the biggest challenges you face helping science-based startups bring their technologies to market?
Probably just making the connections and finding them, because you've got the end client, which is the scientists, but they're also working through a tech transfer office or economic development groups and lots of other variations. So getting connected with them, getting them to understand what was out there, and also where the funding is, because a lot of them, they don't know that. And further, the tech transfer offices have always been a challenge in that they're focusing on finding an immediate licensing deal. Setting up a company is not part of their problem. And that's a challenge. And Tolstoy said, all happy families are happy the same way. Unhappy families are unhappy in different ways. And that's kind of tech transfer offices across the country.
Oh, I love that quote. So you've worked extensively with programs like the SBIR and STTR. What draws you to that government-backed innovation ecosystem? Why that group?
Because the scientists have an idea and it goes so far, but the SBIR projects, the funding is what takes it to the next level, and it makes it more attractive to the eventual partners, whether it's a customer or whether it's a licensing opportunity. The main challenge in all that is getting the validation, because the SBIR process has a lot of heavy people who are looking over the technology and giving feedback on what it needs to grow, how organized the research plan is, et cetera. And that feedback is extremely valuable for the scientists to understand where it goes. And it gives an organized plan for how to move forward into the marketplace.
Okay. And so how do you balance the technical rigor of a scientific innovation with more of the practical demands of the marketplace? It seems like there's a trade-off there sometimes.
I play in the commercialization plan. When things get too technical, I tell them about my MBA. But it's just a focus on my expertise is getting them into the marketplace, and I will steer the conversation in that direction. When you start talking about advanced physics, or biological issues or testing kits, stuff like that. I know what I know, and I also know that what I don't know, and I kind of steer it toward this is what it's going to take to get into the marketplace, and this is how it's going to get how you're going to get money.
And so why the name the Neutrino Donut? Is there a story behind it?
Sure. When I was trying to name the company, I needed something that was different. And so the Higgs boson stuff was happening at that time with neutrinos. And I was looking for a pun on neutrinos. So donut stands for the direct observation of the neutrino tau. And so that's one of the theories of matter. And if you look up Neutrino Donut, I'm out there more often than Fermi Labs, which I'm kind of proud of. But
Cool.
a lot of heavy science people immediately recognize what the Neutrino Donut is, and that's kind of a cool validation. In fact, one guy, the movie Innosphere, a guy named Kip Thorne from Caltech, I actually got some things from him. Anyway, he thought it was a cool name. So a Nobel Prize winner thinks it's a cool name, then you're doing well.
You're in good company there. So let's talk more about the business. What type of startups or technologies do you usually work with? Is there a sector where your team really shines?
I'm focusing mostly on the NIH stuff at this point. I've done a lot of work with DOE and other areas, but the NIH medical devices have been fascinating to me. I'm currently licensing technologies from the VA via multiple universities and taking them forward through the grant process and also trying to find licensing opportunities. One of them is in a glaucoma shunt space. And that is it's a smaller device than what's currently available and can be used to deliver medicine to the eye as part of the glaucoma treatment. And the second one is a heart stent project, which we're finalizing the licensing on. And I'll be taking that forward into the marketplace as well and trying to get grants. For the glaucoma shunt, we've applied for an SBIR phase 1, which we are waiting to hear back. We're doing a resubmission. We got a good score. We need to get a better score. And then we also did a military grant application called CDMRP for congressionally designated medical research projects. So we've got 2 grants going on that particular one. So again, the idea is to advance it further into the marketplace, and then it would be of interest to the outside parties.
So any particular interest in medical devices you have, or is that just better opportunity from a business point of view, or is it something of both?
A little bit of both, but I mean, the medical devices have a quicker path to the marketplace than pharmaceuticals. And the network that you can build up, it's one of those things where you have to be an expert in your field, whatever it is. And so being able to say that I'm an expert on the medical devices and the NIH processes is really what's going on with this. And I'm trying to drive it forward in that respect.
Right. And so what does a typical process look like when you're evaluating a technology and developing a commercialization plan? How do you approach it and what do you do?
Well, a lot of the time up front is trying to figure out if they're actually going to be a customer. And I spend time at no cost with people because we talk about what they're trying to do. If they get a grant, there's this thing called AIMS where you say, here are the 3 things I need to solve. This is how I'm going to do it. And this is what success looks like, but help them develop the AIMS, setting up the meeting with the program officers to see if there's interest from the agencies and working with them. And I do that at no charge because I want to see if they're going to do the work and also whether there's a project there, because honestly, from a consulting perspective, I don't want to charge somebody $500 and say, sorry, it didn't work out. It's a model that doesn't work. The other part is when I talked about people who are feeding me business, it's the next level up who are doing the introductions. And if they know they can introduce me to somebody and the ones that get rejected aren't being charged, it helps a lot for the next deal to come in the door. And spending the time up front is the key thing. Seeing if they're going to do the homework, seeing if they understand what needs to be done.
Good. So you have over 450 tech evaluations under your belt. What would you say is the key to making that process successful?
It's the weeds. You got to get into the details. You got to identify specific people that they should be talking to. You can't say you want to talk to BASF. You want to say this person at BASF is the charge of evaluating new technologies, or this is how you get into a company. For the one technology, for the glaucoma shunt technology, we were trying to get into AbbVie. Well, AbbVie has an online portal for entering new technologies. It's knowing these things, but it's taking it forward in that respect and really getting into the details and saying, here's what it is. Some of the stuff is required for the grant applications, like how big is the market? That can be, a few paragraphs of this and that. One of the techs I'm currently working on there, doing a medical test. And as part of the medical test, I've identified people that will do the manufacturing and distribution for them, which is what they need for market entry. And the funding from that will come from their phase 2 grant if they're successful. And that's how they can enter the market, but that's where the funding will come from. But it's really getting into the details and saying, this specifically is what you need to be doing.
So when you approach those companies with this technology, what does it take to get the interest from the company's side? Is it a compelling technology? Is it a rock star team, or is it all of the above? Or what gets their attention?
For the most part, for the licensing and further conversations, it's the technology, and it's being able to translate what they're doing into something that says, this is where it's viable versus a medical test strip that does these things. And that's not available right now on the marketplace. Chroma shunt does these things. There's all these variations, but you got to kind of do the elevator pitch and get right to the point and set up the next call.
Do you have to have clinical data, or how much data do you have to make your case, or does that part just come later?
That's part of the conversation where, if they have clinical data, that will drive it forward. If it's just, I have a patent, then we need to talk about moving it ahead into a grant process before we take it out to people.
Okay.
And sometimes it's a matter of just keeping people up to date on what you're doing. And a year from now, it might be more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these people, they want to see it sooner, some later. But, a lot of it's just knocking on the door and seeing what happens.
Is it clear what their roadmap is at the company, or is it a state secret and we're just trying to hit on something that might gain interest?
It's hard to tell. A lot of them, you don't know what they want to do, but you know that it's in their general area because they don't always reveal their long-term plans on what they're trying to drive forward. And so you'll take it there and they'll say yes or no. But I mean, part of the trick is being able to put together an extensive list of contact points and then creating information that they will review. And I've got a reputation for presenting stuff that's legitimate and of particular interest to these folks. So at least my stuff gets read.
Right. So when these scientists go out to raise funding, the investors always want to know if they're in contact with the key strategics and how high up the level are they? Are they at VP level or director level, or was it a lab tech that said they like your stuff? What do you find is the access to the higher level people there?
Usually larger corporations have someone who's responsible for receiving the technologies. And the reason why it's advantageous to deal with those people is that their job is to open stuff that's non-confidential. But if you're going out to a department head, they may not care because it's not their job. They may find it interesting, but they can't do anything about it because it's not in their budget. So the people who are in charge of receiving new technologies are the ones that I'm targeting.
Okay. So you operate in both Austin and Los Angeles. How do those regions influence the kind of innovation and partnerships you end up engaging with?
Well, I'm also working in Omaha and a lot of other states, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Nevada, lots of places across the country. I used to do stuff internationally, but that's been less active for quite a while now. But I mean, on a state-by-state basis, it's a matter of having the relationships there and keeping in touch and, becoming part of their infrastructure. For example, I'm part of Bio Nebraska. I'm part of a bunch of groups here in Southern California, and I'm part of the San Antonio Biomed group. So, I mean, that's how I keep it open. I get together with people, I share information. I also volunteer to help do presentations and help do training programs.
You find regional differences with maybe the technology focus? There's oncology here, there's neurology there, or do you think there's just a even mixture in all of these regions?
I mean, Texas and California are very similar, that they're very active for all of the nastiness that gets written between the two of them. It's actually very positive on that end. The challenge is further up north, like Nebraska and Iowa and other states, because they do not understand the SBIR process, or they're not that as interested. Joni Ernst is very active in the SBIR renewal legislation, and she would like to see states that have not gotten very many SBIR grants be elevated to get them sooner. And that's a great idea, except the colleges in Iowa are not applying. And that's really what the challenge is getting the universities to get more interested in it and to drive it forward. Nebraska is getting a lot more interested in it more recently, but that's been one of the pushes to do that. So that's honestly the challenge. Now, the part of the SBIR renewal under discussion is they're talking about having a $70,000 startup to help small companies get something going. And then also some bigger numbers for something that's a long-term project, probably something in the cancer space and things like that.
Well, in the last few minutes that we have here, what else should we cover that we haven't?
It's a fascinating market. It requires all the things that you need to know how to do from the technology perspective, the business perspective, creating relationships, keeping in touch with people. I set up a group we call the Syndicate, and there's about 20 of us, and we share information on what's going on in different programs and areas, and we support each other. It's not a legal group. It's more of just people who are networking. But it just keeps everyone up to date because everyone's hearing things. It's a heavily trusted group in that respect, but it's just keeping things going. When I moved from Philadelphia to Texas, I went from, if you miss a couple of days because you're on vacation, nobody cares, to I got to make something happen today. And if I don't make something happen today, I'm not eating in 3 months. And that mentality is something you have to accept and use and drive forward, because that is basically the way things work. So every day I'm up and I'm looking around and trying to make things happen. And Saturday and Sunday morning, my wife's asleep and I'm doing a few hours of stuff. You'd be amazed at what you can get done when you don't have meetings.
I agree. It does make a difference when you have quality time.
And the last thing I wanted to throw in there is that I was at a Techstars meeting and they asked me what my superpower was. And my superpower is I beat cancer.
Oh, wow.
So
that is a superpower. Yeah.
It is.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you. So, but yeah, there's a lot of great things going on out there. What I've passed on with my kids and friends of kids is just, this is what the world looks like. And you got to be smart. Bottom line is you've got to make things happen and, continually learn.
Well, that's good advice. So how best for listeners to get back in touch with you?
Well, my website's NeutrinoDonut.com. I'm all over LinkedIn. The email address is ehager@Neutrino Donut and the phone number. But yeah, it's pretty easy to find me and I've designed it that way.
Great. We'll include your contact details in the show notes. I want to thank you for joining us today, and we hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
Thank you very much for your time.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.